Welcome to episode 88 of Instant Expertise Marketing. To the surprise of absolutely no one, we are continuing our conversations around AI. And we are continuing to spread the word amongst the knowledge worker friends and colleagues about your need to skill up or risk being left behind. And as one of our clients so poignantly pointed out recently, we're all using AI for some tasks, but no one is really using it intentionally and purposefully. And since a huge impediment to upskilling is a lack of training, we're going to share with you today a framework of what intentional training looks like and what those use cases are. I'm Yvette Brown, co-founder of XPROMOS. I became an entrepreneur at 23 by starting a promotions agency with my then 29-year-old business partner, Shari.
And that makes me Shari, the older business partner in our company.
Still,
And by now, you guys know that Yvette and I approach business from opposite ends of the spectrum, and we still always come to the same conclusions on how we help our clients succeed. And learning to use AI intentionally is how you migrate your skills to getting your feet wet, to jumping into the pond, and finishing your race at a world record pace, right, Yvette?
yeah, that's a really nice Olympic reference there, Shari. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it's a pretty decent reference. You might have remembered at the last Olympics, there were a lot of viral posts that compared how an average guy might compete in an Olympic event and how we needed that for a reference point of how amazing these athletes are. And when you think about that, those Olympic level skills and lightning speed is kind of what it's like working with AI, except
Yeah.
that you are actually the one that goes from couch potato to gold medalist.
All right. And before we get any deeper into mixing these sports metaphors, I think we should get into what we are going to share today, Yvette. And of course, it is related to a sports metaphor.
Naturally. So that's really a good point, and we should probably get focused on that. So, if you've been following us for a while, you may know that we are doing a collab with Simple Academy. They are the #1 AI certification platform for business. And who've been in and around AI for almost a couple years now, have chosen to work with them specifically because they have the only process we've uncovered that is both systematic and methodical. And it's complete with the certification system for all the
Mhm.
competencies and all the roles.
So, what we wanted to share today is what this systematic and methodical foundational framework looks like. And really, whether we help you train your team or not, you can consider this framework as the basis for how your organization can excel with AI enablement and move forward more efficiently.
Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Okay. The Foundational AI Skills Black Belt program by Simple is based on the idea of a martial arts system. So we're right back into our sports metaphors. It has 8 levels. It goes from white belt to black belt, and each of those belts builds upon one another.
Each of the belt levels includes a live 1 hour training session from us, followed by a competency assignment that certifies skills mastery at that level for you.
Yeah, and really the great part about these assignments, unlike what you had to do in school, is that you get to decide what you're going to use AI for in your
Mhm.
assignment. So, as you're learning to apply AI skills at each level to complete belt mastery, you're also immediately using those skills to solve an existing problem in your role. So imagine you have a team of 30 going through training all at one time. That means, as an employer, every week your employees are solving 30 problems with AI just by completing their assignment.
So, as you can see, this is how productivity very quickly reaches 10, 100, even 1,000 times and more, as we have seen.
So let's go through these belts kind of one by one so you can see what we're talking about and kind of the difference between using AI randomly and using it with a methodical, systematic approach to solving problems. So
Now,
first we start with
no,
the
go ahead.
white belt, and that's where you're going to get familiar with ChatGPT and what you can do with it.
And note that this foundational training, it applies to any AI, whether that's an open AI, Claude, Gemini, or really whatever tool of choice you're using. We will be focusing on ChatGPT, and that is really just based on its overall popularity. And in this training, we walk you through 10 or so ways that you can use that you didn't even know existed yet.
Yeah, and that alone, and if you have gone through our free live webinar, we walk through a bit of that as well. And for many people, for most people really, because 99%, and that's not a fake number, of users are not familiar with what it can do today, in part because half of what it can do is new as of 6 months ago. But
Mhm.
that's really eye-opening all in of itself. But we're here to tell you it's really just the beginning. Like that's just like the scratching the surface to, getting a new car and seeing that you can drive around the block. Like that's great, but you have no idea what's really possible when you've got this power behind you. So after that white belt training, we move on to the yellow belt.
And in the yellow belt training, we cover how to use AI in your role, no matter which role, which one of the 161,238 LinkedIn titles you hold. And yes, that's how many LinkedIn titles are out there. Anyway, and this is where the possibilities really start to emerge. People realize now what they can do with AI is uniquely tied to their own expertise and their specific role, not something generic that they have to go and figure out on their own. It's very specific, right, Yvette?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Shari. And so that's what yellow belt is all about. And after yellow belt comes green belt, right? And if you thought that yellow was something, green is going to blow your mind. And because in the green level is when you learn how to make GPTs.
Wait, what's a GPT? I think we need to explain that. I know you and I know, but maybe our listeners don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question, Shari. GPT actually technically stands for generative pre-trained transformer. Now,
That's a mouthful.
as a marketer, I don't think it's the sexiest of names, but its power is undeniable. What a GPT is essentially is a little system that you can set up so that AI can perform a repeatable task using your deeply specialized body of knowledge on a specific topic so that it can be applied in a custom situation by inputting custom information.
All right, that was a lot to swallow. I get it. And I know we're so deeply immersed in this that we're probably a few steps ahead, but let's give them an example of that.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Okay, so let's say that you're on our Simple Core platform. What you'll see there is that there are a whole series of GPTs called the AI book tools.
Mhm.
And in this instance, this is a whole library of tools that you can reference where little GPTs have been built like this. So let's say you want to use a framework from the book called The Lean Startup. Having done a multitude of interviews with B2B SaaS founders, I'm aware that this is actually one of their favorite books. Everybody loves it. As a marketer, we hear a lot about Cialdini and Persuasion, and that's another popular one. But let's stick to the Lean Startup. Okay. So what you would do if you're on the core platform is you would open this little custom GPT and you would follow the prompts to have an interactive conversation with ChatGPT. Your replies result in an output response that's specific to your business that applies the framework, like all of the key lessons from the lean startup. So it's sort of like having the author again in your back pocket, and you're giving him like, you're like, I love this framework, but tell me specifically how this would work for me, and it'll kick that right back to you. And like I said, Simple's library features hundreds of titles like this where you can go through the same framework exercise. And the reason this is important is because, as we talk about in our webinar, that's kind of the way that the world's greatest leaders lead. Is they find a problem they want to solve, they go look at the best frameworks for solving that problem, they apply it to their business, and they choose a pathway. But now you don't have to go through the reading and looking and all of that. You can just kind of use the GPT, helps you kind of walk right through that. So that's kind of how it works on an existing one. Now imagine creating your own GPT. And what that means is following a process where you think through how you can create something customized that you do all the time. Like, for instance, Shari, you and I, we might want to create sweepstakes draft rules that are ready for legal review. We could probably create a GPT for this where the user, us, is prompted to input all of the relevant information to create a custom set of rules. We know, as the experts in the field, that this would include things like the name of your sweepstakes, the dates, the prizes, the odds of winning, how you win, the name of the sponsor, address, etc., etc. And by just inputting that information, the GPT could then spit out a draft set of rules that we would then easily just be able to send over to legal for, final review and approval. That would be pretty sweet compared to our old way of doing it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? I think that's a great, not just example. I think you should be building that right now.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on the list. And
Okay.
yeah, but that's an example.
That's a good example. Now, once again, imagine what would happen if those 30 employees each go through the process of creating their own GPT to do just that one thing that they can do in 10 minutes now. And it took them 5 hours in the past. And yes, we've seen those numbers happen. And now that's how you get to 30 times productivity from any one task. Just one task with one person times 30.
Yeah. And that's, and before we move on to the next belt, I also want to say about Greenbelt is that this is one of the places where we do allow an extra week for homework, because your assignment in Greenbelt is to create your own GPT, like Shari said. And while that may seem really daunting, it's not as bad as it sounds. Creating a GPT takes probably about the same time it takes to do that manual task once. You're not coding per se, you're writing things in natural language, but there is a process and there's things you need to know. There's things you need to account for and, set some parameters and rules up for the bot so it outputs correctly. But once you master that skill, or at least gain that skill, it is kind of like transformational of itself, because all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can create a GPT for this or that or what that, like it's a big step in the process, and we're only 3 belts in. So, chances are when you get to the green belt, you're going to feel pretty upskilled. But the magical ROI for the company really starts happening when you move up to the blue belt, which is where you discover how to connect these different activities and GPTs to create efficient workflows.
Absolutely. And guys, this is where 100 times productivity here is really the low bar. And I just want to extend a comment on Yvette talking about the homework and building your own GPT, because we've been talking to people about this training. And one of the things they kind of go, oh, we've got all this homework. But guys, don't take the training if you're not going to engage with it, because the homework is what puts you in a position to actually be able to use it every single day and make you and your organization more productive. So this is setting the foundation so that when you're done with training, you can start using it every day. It's not, oh, I forget how to do that. That training was great, but I forget. This training is magical and transformational when you go through it and do the homework.
Yeah, and to that point, Shari, again, most GPTs that are built can be built in less time than it takes to do that task manually. So
Absolutely.
for that example of, 5 hours for the rules, 4 or 5 hours for rules, probably about right.
Yeah.
And so could I build a GPT to fix that in that time? Yeah, probably 4 hours, maybe three. The first one
Right.
might be 4 hours, but your next GPT is going to be faster because you've mastered things like syntax and rules and like that type of thing. So don't be
Right.
scared by the homework. This is not term paper life. This is just, getting stuff done to show you can do it and you're ready to move
Right.
on to the next belt.
You can apply it at work.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good example. So, now that, like you said, Shari, we've got this 100x productivity, um, it's fitting that our next belt is the purple belt. Because at
Hmm.
this level, you focus on how your role is going to change given the efficiencies of AI. So, because let's be honest, if you're a solopreneur, it might be a little different because maybe you're going to go through this program and say, well, you know what? I can finally do that, 4 hour work week that everybody's been talking about because I just, leveled up my productivity more than I imagined. And you can live that lifestyle, which is fantastic. If you're in an organization, let's be honest, they're going to find something else to backfill the rest of your time, whatever that looks like. But the reality is, in Purple Belt, we're focused on figuring out what that thing is, right? How is your role going to change? What does the future look like? How are we staying ahead of
Hmm.
this? And, for me, for instance, as a creative, I don't want AI. I'm not looking for AI to take over the write all my copy for me or come up with every idea or whatever. I'm looking for it to be more efficient through my thinking processes. But what I
Right.
really wanted to do is take all of the crummy activities that I have to do, like create versioning of things,
Hmm.
and get that done more efficiently, like rule writing and things that aren't, with all due respect to the legal folks, they're not as fun to work through. So that's our goal here, is to focus on taking away those things that take time that, are not the best, not the most fun part of your day, and really circle back to focusing on the activities that drive satisfaction and allow you to think about the future.
Next up would be the brown belt, if you're familiar with martial arts. So, this is where we lean into agents, which is where you discover how AI starts to connect the work with multiple people in the process. This is 1,000 times improvements are seen here, and they're just routinely created at this belt level. And I think you guys, if you're following along, you can start to see how this is evolving and how you can get to this point.
Yeah, and a typical example for this is, in an agency setting, if you think about the workflow that you might be going through to get a new project from conception to presentation, it goes through a lot of departments and hands depending
Mhm.
on the nature of what it is, and what you're doing. And agents sort of allow you, each department, if you will, each unit, to optimize their part and then connect it to the other parts so we more quickly and efficiently get to the deliverable for the client, and we can move forward quickly and efficiently. So after that happens, it takes us to the black belts, which is where we focus on mentoring other people through the process of transformation to go from being human to AI powered human.
So, all in all, it's about a 90-day program. It's weekly training sessions, and we've built in a couple of extra weeks for staying on top of assignments that might possibly take you a little bit longer. And also, we want to be able to accommodate any schedule conflicts that might arise as we're moving along.
So, yes, in 1 quarter, you can get your team intentionally trained on elite AI skills to move from dabbling to industry leading.
So that means if you start by September 1st, you would be going into the new year with a decided and a huge advantage over any of those other laggard competitors out there in your space.
Yeah, this is a huge opportunity. And I think with that, Sherry, we're going to wrap up today. As we said at the top, upskilling is critical for all knowledge workers, no matter what position you're in. It's critical for you as an employee, it's critical for your organization. And using AI intentionally matters. And you can't get there unless you're following a systematic, methodical approach.
That's exactly right, Yvette. And you can find out more about our collab by visiting xpromos.com. And in the meantime, drop us a like if you found today's podcast to be valuable, and hit subscribe if you loved it. See you next time.